Hello and welcome to the Road to the Garden podcast. It's Matt St. Jean here with Joe Howie this time. If you're a Providence fan, you know him from the Flex. He's our Providence writer. Joining us for this one because we got a big Providence game coming up this week and stuff to talk about there. A lot going on in the Big East. Welcome back to Road to the Garden, Joe.
Matt, thanks for having me. I'm happy to be back on the show. We had quite the week of Big East basketball, so let's get into it.
Yeah. This podcast is presented by House Enterprise and in partnership with House of College Hoops. Head over to our site, house-enterprise.com, for more info. That's where you're going to find my written Power Rankings article that I'm going to be finishing up right after this one. And an interesting week in the Power Rankings. We can look back here. We're going to start by looking back, as we always do, at what happened this week over a loaded Thanksgiving slate, feast week there. By the way, that was fun. Just a great week of basketball. It was great to have that back.
You know, I the past couple of years it's been a little weird, but it was just great to have college basketball, NFL football, and Thanksgiving all in the same week again. Just felt great. It's just nothing better. No better time of year.
I know you're a Giants fan. I'm a Patriots fan, so it was good to have some basketball after the way those games were on Thanksgiving.
Yeah, it was great to have some other sport to shout at the TV for, especially when NFL officiating is just at its lowest point of the season.
There was
disgusting.
All three Thanksgiving games were marred by pretty horrendous officiating. So yeah, I don't know what was going on there, but hey, you know what? At least we're college basketball fans, where the officiating is always unbiased and fair.
Oh, always, especially in the Big East.
Never any issues with officiating in the Big East, as we're all very well aware.
Never.
Yeah. Let's start with probably the top story this week. The UConn Huskies right now, a team UConn fans will love that the team is up to, I believe, number 8 in KenPom now. Top team in the Big East there. A couple huge wins. They're going to play later today. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But this is the UConn team. I mean, this UConn team is as good on the court as I think people thought it could be on paper. I think the thing that stands out the most to me, their win over Oregon, score-wise, was almost identical to their win over Stonehill in Stonehill's first ever game of the Division I level. I mean, they're making Oregon look like a team that's playing its first Division I game, and this is a good Oregon team. And then what they did, this is UConn's really hot right now.
Yeah, as a diehard Providence fan and and our resident UConn hater here at Road to the Garden, I have to admit they look really good. Normally, when UConn is given preseason praise, I'm the first one to take a knock on them and say, like, Danny Hurley hasn't done anything, and they're living up to it this year. They look really good. Adama Sanogo looks really threatening, and he's making a really strong case for Big East Player of the Year. And they're only 7 games in.
Yeah, and this is he won our Big East Player of the Week this week, which it's unfair that guy added a 3 to his repertoire this year. I don't know.
Filthy.
Yeah, and what's really insane, we're going to talk about Creighton next here too. Ryan Kalkbrenner could be in the conversation for Player of the Year nationally, like a Big Man of the Year nationally, and he's probably not even the second best big man in his own conference right now. It's incredible how loaded the Big East is down the middle. But I mean, it's not just Sunoco for UConn. It is everybody. This team has scored at least 80 points in every game. The offense is firing on all cylinders, and that's what this team was missing the last couple seasons. They've had that defensive mindset. They've been able to play really hard-nosed basketball, but then in those tough losses that they've had, it's always been because the offense did not deliver the way it was supposed to in big games. Well, they just put up 82 points against Alabama, and that was their worst offensive game of the year. So it seems like now that they figured this out, the defense is still there, and it's not going to take a whole lot for UConn to jump Creighton in the rankings here either.
No, I don't think so either. I mean, I think Creighton, just because of the preseason bias, is holding on to that one spot. Not to mention they actually do look really good. Yeah. But if UConn keeps, plowing through their schedule with this full head of steam, they're going to jump Creighton within the next couple of weeks, especially with conference play on the horizon. Creighton better watch out.
Yeah, those UConn Creighton games are going to be put on your calendar. UConn hosts Creighton January 7th, and then they travel to Creighton on February 11th. Those are going to be the must-watch games. Those could be games between two top 10 teams. So yeah, well, those are going to be amazing. Andre Jackson is back from the injury now. This team, UConn's finally a little bit healthier too, which is huge for them because they were banged up at the start of the year when they were doing all of that to some bad teams. They're healthy and they're doing it to good teams. We're gonna talk about the game they have today later, but they're going to be playing an Iowa State team that looks decent. They get Oklahoma State at the middle of the week, and that's a good team. And then they actually travel to Florida next Wednesday, looking ahead a little bit. So the next 3 games are all going to be either quad 1 or quad 2 for them. And if they look the way they are right now, it's going to be impossible to rank them anywhere outside the top 10.
No, I'm looking at the schedule right now, Matt. And if you look at this 5-game stretch that UConn is going to go on and is on right now, it's Oregon, Alabama, Iowa State, Oklahoma State, Florida. Those are all, like you said, those are quality opponents. Like there's no cupcakes on that stretch right there. If UConn can come out of that 5-0 or 4-1, they should be in the top 10.
Yeah, and I love the scheduling there to just get a road game against Florida on the books.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's also one thing that makes it nice is there's some common opponents here. So Xavier also played Florida, and gives you a little bit before we get to conference play. You can weigh some of this out a little bit just because some of these teams are playing each other, makes that easier to figure out.
Yeah.
So for as good as UConn looks, and this the UConn team has been fantastic. Creighton, they're still at the top of our power rankings. They were in our game of the week last week. They are in our game of the week for this week, both against teams from Texas. I want to start with the game of the week against Texas Tech last Monday. That they kind of had all the issues we thought Creighton might have in the first half, and they just fixed them all in the second half and dominated.
It was definitely a tale of two halves. I was, passively watching that game. I was a little busy, but when it's like you said, when I tuned in the first half, I was like, oh, all right, not the best. I was like, all right, maybe Kalkbrenner's a little overrated. And then, I forget what I did, but I came back and the TV was still on. I was like, oh, all right, I guess they are legit. No, Creighton has lived up to the expectations. I think there was definitely recency bias given the way they ended last season coming into this season. And I think if you look at the body of work that they've put in to this point with only 1 loss and a bunch of quality wins, they're definitely a team nationally that's on the radar. Me personally, Kalkbrenner, in the past, I've called him just like a big lanky guy. He actually is very athletic now and knows how to play really good basketball. Yeah. So take back those comments.
The end of that Arkansas game too, both Kalkbrenner and Ryan Nembhard, I think, kind of showed up in the way that they need to win games like that. I mean, obviously, when you're Kalkbrenner's height, dunking is easy, but he made it look even easier with a couple of those plays late where it was just he was spinning off of double teams really well and finding space, and that's so dynamic. And then that dunk from Nembhard. I was watching. I was getting ready to travel the next day for the holidays, so I was watching with my girlfriend's family, just kind of on my computer on the side to go figure out what was going on. And I got up out of my chair and had to very quietly give a couple fist pumps after that. I was just fired up.
You texted me a tweet to that. I was like, oh, you were like, don't even look, just watch.
Yeah, just watch this clip. Yeah, that was
great
with authority from Ryan Nembhard. And it's like Creighton lost this week, and I don't care like that.
No,
you beat Texas Tech and Arkansas in back-to-back days with as athletic, as long, as physical, as defensive as those teams are. You lose a close one to Arizona where you still looked pretty good. So
I don't hate that loss.
No, and it's 3 games in 3 days when you have to play a couple of really good defensive teams. It just you get worn down by the 3rd day. They're not going to have to do anything like that again until March.
And I think you can look at that loss and you can still pull away a couple of positives. Creighton was down 12 in the second half, and you and I talked about this before we started recording. And, by the end of that game, it was, possession by possession. So I think, you tip your hat to Creighton for chipping their way back into that one. That's a team where if they're down 15 to, let's just say DePaul goes on like some streaky run in conference play, they're down 15 to DePaul, you can't be too comfortable. No. Because Creighton's a team that just showed that against a top-ranked team in the country, they're going to chip back and make it a 3-point game.
Yeah, and this is, I think you can make the analogy to UConn in that these are both teams last year that played good defense but had the inconsistent offense. They still play the defense, and now
Yep.
the offense has taken that next step that people were hoping it could take. That's again, I think where Kalkbrenner's development has been huge this year.
Mhm.
How good he's gotten. He just does not miss close to the basket too.
No.
I think he's. When I checked earlier this week, I have not checked today. He was basically the best high volume 2-point shooter in the country, and it wasn't that close. The best in the power conference for sure. So I mean, again, being 7-1 helps with that.
Absolutely, it does.
Yeah, but hey, it's if you got to find a way to defend it, and teams have not been able to do that. That Creighton Arkansas game, to the stat that stood out to me: 13 turnovers in the first half for Creighton, 0 in the second half. Talk
Yeah.
about an adjustment.
I mean, that's coaching too. I mean, you and I have always said that, Greg McDermott's a good coach. He's one of the senior guys in the conference now. That's coaching. That is 100% coaching and identifying something that went wrong and fixing it and making
Yeah.
sure your team knows to fix it.
Yeah, and that's also these are young players kind of in their not first real test. But this is that Texas Tech game. Oh yeah, sorry, that was Texas Tech with the turnovers, not Arkansas. The Texas Tech game is probably the second toughest opponent that these Creighton players have ever played. The young guys, outside of the Kansas game in the tournament last year, like Ryan Nemhard didn't play in that one. I think that was that the one where Kalkbrenner got injured, or did he?
That was the one where Kalkbrenner got injured, and they lost to Kansas by 7, I think, with missing 2 starters.
Yeah, and it's like, all right, well, this is the first real test that Ryan Nemhard has played in against a team that's like national championship caliber with what they do at Texas Tech. And yeah, you play defense like that, there's going to be growing pains. They adjusted. He got through it. He figured out how to handle the double teams that they were throwing at him, how to pass out of it, how to find the open guys, and then the guys hit shots. I think they beat Texas Tech with 4 bench points. I mean, it's just it's the 5 starters. They're really good. Baylor Shireman too.
I was going to bring him up.
Yeah, he gets the hype for the shooting, but it's really the shooting is almost like the third best aspect of his game.
I was going to say, we saw him in a lens last season because we only looked at him really before and after the South Dakota State Providence NCAA tournament matchup, just because we're Providence guys. He is like an aggressive rebounder. He's flirting with averaging a double-double at this point in the season. He's just over 9 rebounds per game and 12 points. Like, that's not what I expected. I thought he was going to come in and he was going to be that typical like shooter that everybody hates and you can't leave him open and he's going to train it. No, he plays big. He plays really big.
He's honestly the guy he reminds me the most of might be Noah Horchler for Providence.
A little bit.
A guy who can kind of play the 3 or the 4 and can knock down the shots, but he'll rebound, he'll pass. Sharman's a really good passer. He sets up guys well, which with the scorers they have on that, they got 3 guys who can really play make for them, which is unfair.
It's just 3-point guards.
Yeah, they can play make from every position on the floor. Everybody can hit shots. This Creighton team is fantastic and really fun to watch too.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun when Providence plays them. I'll tell you that.
Those will be some entertaining games for sure. We'll see. We'll have to find out what Greg McDermott and Ed Cooley get up to the night before the game.
Oh, a little Federal Hill action for sure.
They said last year they just ordered a pizza and stayed in at Ed Cooley's house, which killed me.
Big Tony's or Mondo's?
Oh, is Mondo? I think Mondo's is gone now.
No, they're back.
They're back in business. I gotta hit that up. But yeah, it wasn't just those 2 teams that did well this week. 2 other teams kind of proved themselves to be teams near the top of the Big East here. St. John's still undefeated at this point. Neither win over Temple or Syracuse looks fantastic right now, but they did get to hoist a trophy this week in the Empire Classic. I think St. John's is the best team in the state of New York right now. They conquered another borough in New York City there by winning in Brooklyn. Big stuff there. Andre Curbelo is just really fun to watch. And then Xavier. Xavier lost to Duke. I don't really care about that game because it's Duke and it was close. Xavier has 2 losses against kind of championship caliber teams up there. Both of them were close. Obviously, at some point, you'd like to see them win one of those. They're going to get a chance later tonight against Gonzaga. Obviously, they're going to get chances in Big East play with Creighton and UConn that they're going to be going against. If you can win one of those games, that's the difference between Xavier being a top 25 team and being a top 15 team, proving you can play with those guys and win. Yep. But both of these teams, in my eyes, should be ranked this week.
If the top 4 of our power conference rankings for Road to the Garden are not ranked, I think that's a serious issue because St. John's is 7-0 right now. And I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. They're giving me glimpses of last season's Providence team. They're
Mhm.
not playing the prettiest of opponents, and they're not playing them particularly well, but they're winning, and their offense looks good in the process. Joel Soriano has probably the best resume right now for Big East Most Improved.
Yeah.
He is lighting it up in the post, and it's kind of been night and day with him. You look at what he did last season to look at what he's doing now. He is playing really good. Um, with that said, St. John's doesn't have a ton of quality wins on this resume thus far. I mean,
They
you
haven't played a game that'll be a quad one game yet this year.
you can make the argument that the Syracuse win is quad one, but Syracuse just lost to Bryant last night after Doug Edert, NCAA tournament hero, slapped a Syracuse player and then ran for the hills.
Yeah,
If you haven't
he
seen
got
that video,
slapped
I'd
first in
recommend.
that one too.
Yeah.
I don't blame him. If a guy just slaps you out of nowhere, I just slap him back, and then that should be it. If they're trying to come after you at that one, I don't think
Yeah.
that's on you.
No, I mean that video is so funny. It's going everywhere right now. The way he's hiding behind people.
And the interaction with Boeheim and Grasso after that game too.
Well, you know what? Fun fact: Jim Boeheim leads the NCAA in killing men. Jim Boeheim killed a man.
People sleep on that.
Yeah. So, but anyway, long tangent over. St. John's looks good. I was watching the end of that. Who did they just play? The Niagara game last night because it was dipping into the Providence feed, and I was thinking to myself, this is a St. John's team that should be a resident top 4 in the conference, pending any cataclysmic collapse. But they look really good. As for the Musketeers, you know very well I am similar to the resident UConn hater, the resident Xavier hater. But I have to say, no Travis Steele, and this team looks to be turning it around. Losses to 12th ranked Indiana and 8th ranked Duke, don't look necessarily terrible on the resume, especially you lost to Indiana by 3, you lost to Duke by less than 10. They look good. Fremantle has seriously improved, and if he can keep his mouth shut towards the refs, he should earn an all-conference selection, which I hate to say, but they look good.
Yeah, Fremantle coming back, this is a resurgence for him. The way that's happened, I'm happy for him after the way last season went for him. To get this bounce back is probably huge mentally. And I had questions about the Xavier team, particularly around the playmaking and the way Colby Jones has showed up is awesome for them. He's kind of added that, and the way they play, it's almost like they almost play Colby Jones as a kind of second point guard there. It's he and Sule Boom at the top, but Boom is more of a combo guard.
Yeah.
And Colby Jones can play make. That frees up the other guards, Kunkel and Boom and all those guys to do what they do best and just hit shots. And you can still have 2 big guys down in the post, 2 forwards there with Nunji and Fremantle and make stuff work with that. And it works well. I think there's still questions about Xavier's defense and consistency, depth, but those are all like, okay, are they top 25 or are they top 15? This is still a really good team. Also on Joel Soriano, he has a double-double in 6 of 7 games so far. It's 21 points and 19 rebounds against Niagara.
I saw that's incredible. I mean, that's like a man's work in the paint. Like,
yeah. Free throw is still an issue for St. John's a little bit there, but and if they continue to play close games like they've been doing, that may come back to haunt them. But they haven't lost yet, and they've played a couple decent teams now, and well, we'll see how the rest of the schedule looks for St. John's. They get Iowa State this week. Actually, it's a week from today. They get them next Sunday, which I think that becomes a very, very interesting game. They're going to be their biggest test here of the non-conference by far, with how Temple and Syracuse have fallen off. Yeah. So how they do in that one probably determines exactly how highly we're thinking of St. John's heading into conference play.
Yeah, I agree. And just another note on Xavier really quick. We talked about this, Matt, a lot offline in the preseason. Is Xavier brings in a very similar roster to last season, but a new coach. And we were saying that what happens without, Travis Steele? Do these guys perform the same way or do they perform better? And I think, you can attest the first couple of games of the season here to coaching, Fremantle's resurgence, the duality at the point guard position. I think you can you can credit that to the coaching of Miller. It'll be interesting to see how that translates into conference play. Again, this is still non-conference. I mean, early tests against Indiana and Duke are showing, but
Yeah.
I think the coaching at Xavier has seriously improved year over year.
And I think you see it in like the defensive intensity. That's
Yep.
probably the area where you see it the most. Is even if the defense isn't always working out as well as you'd like it to, they guys just seem more locked in on that end, and that matters. Defense is like 90% attitude and effort.
Yeah. Hey, I say that all the time. You need to, if you want to defend, you need to have the will to defend.
And these guys just look more locked in there, and so that's good. We'll see. Sean Miller looks good. We still have no word on any possible suspension for him.
No.
So we'll see what happens. But that's long term. The short term, things look good for Xavier. We're going to talk about them in a little bit here with their game against Gonzaga tonight. No Adam Kunkel for that one, apparently. I just saw that come through. So it's going to be a tough game for them. We'll talk about that in a little bit. While we're talking about tough games and tough teams right now, what is going on with Villanova and Georgetown? Let's start with Georgetown.
I was going to say that's the easier one to answer.
Yeah. My power rankings article that's coming out right after this, and I have to put the finishing touches on it. All I wrote for Georgetown is what the buyout is for Patrick Ewing. Like that's all. And that, let me tell you, that game on Tuesday. So I was traveling on Tuesday for the holiday.
Yep.
And I was so it's going to be on the road, limited internet access, and I saw an 11:30 start for Georgetown that day. That we against American shouldn't have to worry about this game. Shouldn't need to be worrying about social media content. Should just be able to follow the score on my phone, and I'm going to be fine for content for the week. And then the second half happens, and Georgetown just collapses. And I'm just sitting there watching. I can't leave. I have to see this through. I can't go see my family until I find out what happens with this game, because now all of a sudden this game matters. This game is suddenly important when it absolutely should not have been.
No, it really shouldn't have been.
American's a bad team. They're without, I think, their best player for that game too. And Georgetown, I mean, it's just this team is way too talented to be playing like this. They were down to UMBC yesterday.
It's just when you put on that season opener against Coppin State, and side note, my brother and I have a weird obsession with Coppin State because I think one year they went 0-22. And I read an article about them. I think it was Rothstein that wrote it. I could be wrong about just how they are like America's buy game. Like they will play back-to-back games across the country on back-to-back nights because of the money that it brings in for their athletic department.
They did that in that opener. They were on less than 24 hours rest when they played Georgetown.
So I was fascinated with that game to begin with, and Georgetown almost lost to them. And I think that's just a microcosm of what we're seeing this season. I really like Patrick Ewing. I think he is, if there was ever a more Big East person to be in the Big East, it's him. He made his career at Georgetown, went on NBA Hall of Famer. It's a shame that he came back to Georgetown and this is what's being produced. Aside from that one Big East tournament championship win, which was really, it was the COVID year. It was a weird year. Aside from that, he really hasn't done anything. And basically, you thought Georgetown is getting Qudus Wahab back, the couple of transfers, they're gonna improve year over year from last season. No, they come back in and they're doing the same stuff that they did last season. And it's, I don't know, it's disheartening a little bit.
Yeah, and I think the biggest issue there is just player retention. I think there were red flags when year after COVID and guys could come back and have an extra year of eligibility. Yeah. None of the Georgetown guys came back for that. We've seen plenty of guys leave that program. Now you got Dante Harris, who's just not playing for him. I don't know the full information on that situation. I think I'm going to throw it over to Hilltop Hoops for that. They do a great job covering Georgetown. So any information you want, specifics on that stuff, I'm just going over to them. And Zach Penrice does the Georgetown coverage for us too, and he has good insight on that. So definitely go check out what they're saying. But you can't build a good program if guys are leaving every single year. Nobody wants to stick around. I mean, Muhammad also gone from last year. He went to the NBA
Yep.
just to give that a try and staying around at Georgetown another year. And it's also the same issues, X's and O's issues on the court again, with a different cast of characters.
Yeah. And I don't know. You feel bad because Georgetown and DePaul have kind of been the resident punching bags of the conference for the past decade, we'll call it. And now, like, DePaul is showing improvements with Stubblefield in what is this, year 2 with him?
Year 2 there.
And Georgetown is in year 5 of Ewing.
It's 6 now.
Year 6, and there's just been a steady regression from that first season.
Yeah, and that right there is your issue. There's no improvement. Yeah, this is the 6th year for Ewing there. So, yeah, there's nothing going on there. We have a new coach, though, to talk about here, and Kyle Neptune at Villanova, because Villanova's 2-4 to start a season for the first time in my life. It was 1997, the last time that they started a season like this. And it's so weird because they played Michigan State close on the road. They took Iowa State to overtime. Like, Iowa State's a good team. Portland is not nearly as bad as that name would suggest. This team's actually around in the top 110 of KenPom right now. They got a good coach. Like, Portland they don't have name recognition, but that's not a bad team.
Yeah.
But you have to win games. Villanova does not have a win against a team in the top 200 right now in KenPom.
Yeah, this is something I, coming into the season, was very cautious about with Kyle Neptune coming in. I know the banner explanation for this from the Villanova side of things is that you're missing your 2 best players. And that's all fine and well, but your other guys are supposed to pick you up when those guys are down. And I don't know if your 2 best players make a difference in losses that are just unexplainable.
Yeah.
But I think, what we're seeing here is you're seeing glimpses of Caleb Daniels and Eric Dixon doing what they're supposed to do. You're seeing glimpses of the new guys doing what they're supposed to do, but they're at different times. And I think that's where you see the difference in Kyle Neptune and Jay Wright. Jay Wright would have gotten those guys on the same page. And to be fair, I think I look at this, Michigan State at Michigan State, that's a tough game. I don't know if Jay Wright wins that game. I think Jay Wright beats Iowa State and Portland, though. And you're looking at a completely different, Villanova this many games in. And I think that's where the difference is in coaching. And, you credit Kyle Neptune. He took a big job. He was a 500 career coach in one season at Fordham, and he took the Villanova job. Like, that's a very big step.
Yeah.
So you give him credit. He's doing what he can do.
Yeah, and he has experience with Villanova, obviously, and that Fordham job is tough. I know even getting to 500 with Fordham is an accomplishment.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just he does not have that much experience as a head coach here. I think the other thing that's worth mentioning is just player development. Chris Arcidiacono is starting for them right now. He's probably the worst starter in the Big East. And also, he's probably their best option right now because the depth is not playing well. They have 3 guards right now coming off the bench who were 4 or 5-star recruits in Mark Armstrong, Angelo Brizzi, and Brendan Housen. None of them look good. Against Portland, Brizzi and Housen went 0 for 6 from deep. The 3 of those guys combined for a total of 2 assists off the bench, and all of them played nearly 20 minutes. You need your guys to play better than that. Like, you need your actual highly recruited guys to play well. These guys are all recruited at around the same level as the guys we see at Creighton right now succeeding.
I think, too, the Chris Arcidiacono point is great. And this is where I think we're missing Justin Moore, we're missing Cam Whitmore argument is absolutely 110% valid. They changed the dynamic at the point guard spot 100%. Yeah. And this is a Villanova team that has thrived off of point guard play through the end of the Jay Wright era here. You look at Colin Gillespie, you look at Jalen Brunson, you look at Dante DiVincenzo, who was a combo guard but still held the reins at some points. You look at Ryan Arcidiacono. Like, Villanova built their success off of point guard play. And if you have Chris Arcidiacono, who has shown 0 player development through the first 3 years of his career at Villanova because he was a residential bench player, like starting and playing significant minutes, I get it. It's out of need. Yeah. You're not going to win a lot of games like that.
No. And Caleb Daniels has been fine for them. Like, he's played really good basketball for what they're asking him to do. He just needs more help. This team has 4 starters that are good Big East players,
Yeah.
and then the rest of this roster is not contributing. And I think coaching is a factor here, but at the end of the day, if the players aren't developing, like it's only so much of that is on the coaches. I think there's a talent evaluation factor there. I've always found it interesting that the Jay Wright teams, like Colin Gillespie was a 3-star, Sadiq Bey, who's in the NBA now, was a 3-star. Seems like Villanova has done better with finding diamonds in the rough than with actually recruiting the high level guys.
Yeah.
Brandon Slater was really highly recruited. He took forever to get to the point where he's at now. I think you can almost draw a comparison between him and a guy like AJ Reeves at Providence, where it's a guy who's highly recruited and just never quite lives up to the potential. Becomes a really solid, good player, but is kind of always going to be a third or fourth option on a good team.
Yeah. No, I think it's a great comparison.
Yeah. So hopefully Cam Whitmore and Justin Moore can help out Villanova, because this team has talent and they can play with good teams. I think they're 10th in our power rankings, which feels a bit harsh, but also they didn't win a game this week. They had the worst loss in the conference in the last week.
I will say
second worst. Georgetown.
Second worst. I will say the power rankings that we put out are like ranking for ranking what I put in. I put Villanova at 10th. I couldn't not put Georgetown at last.
They're kind of locked. They're locked into that right now.
It took everything in my being to not move them. Georgetown has to be last, just given what they've done. Villanova's under 500, and no other team in the conference is under 500. I just, based on record alone, they have to be in the basement right now. And it's a weird feeling, because normally at this point in the season, everyone around the country is high on Villanova, and the narrative is Villanova is going to carry the Big East. And I think Creighton and UConn have kind of, taken that claim and ripped it from everyone else. Like, Villanova is in the basement of the conference right now, but we're still getting national attention. If Villanova was good, the Big East would have 5 teams ranked next week easily, just from name recognition alone.
Yeah, and Villanova has a hard schedule coming up here, so they're going to have opportunities to kind of earn back this resume. 3 of their next 4 games are going to be against kind of quality opponents. They get Oregon today, which we're going to talk about. They get Oklahoma at home on Saturday, which I'll tell you, when that game was announced, I kind of dismissed it as an easy win for Villanova, because Oklahoma has been an up and down program out there, and they have not always been great. It's a home game for Villanova, and that game shouldn't be close. Now that looks like a very, very close game. And then weekend after that, Villanova has a neutral site game in New York against Boston College. And Boston College is not a great team, but it's a power conference team. And Boston College is better than any team Villanova has beaten thus far this season. They're probably about as good as Portland is right now. So it's a game you absolutely can't lose.
I have a fun fact about this Villanova-Boston College matchup is that Boston College is led by point guard Makai Ashton Langford. Matt, for all our Providence listeners, you remember him and how frustrating he was to watch, except for his 20-point performance against Villanova. The last time Villanova met Boston College, I think Makai Ashton Langford put up some sort of a relatively similar stat line. Is it third? But that Boston College lost to them too. Is it third time's the charm now for Mr. Ashton Langford and his hatred of the Wildcats? We'll see.
Yeah, we will see. And that's Villanova. I mean, you can lose to Oregon and Oklahoma, at least in theory, because those are decent teams, and it's not. It'll hurt, but you can make those games back in Big East play. You can't lose to BC. And you can't lose all 3 of those games.
No.
And then you're pretty much out of the tournament unless you win 14, 15 games in the Big East. Then you're in a really rough spot. So Villanova's got to turn this on right now. I don't know when they get Cam Whitmore back, too. I think he was supposed to be back around this time. And we haven't really gotten an update there. So that'll be the situation to monitor. But yeah, that's looking back on the conference this week. I know we're going to look forward, but is there anything else that happened to this week that we feel like is worth mentioning here?
Jaden Pierre outplayed Jared Bynum last night. I think that is certainly notable. I mean,
the first time that's happened this season either.
No, it's not. I mean, there are other storylines in the conference. They're not necessarily the storylines that are going to get the national attention. Providence underperforms against 2 bunnies, but We're kind of used to that. Marquette had an up and down week. Butler had an up and down week. I just think the middle of the pack is what else is basically everything we didn't talk about right now. We talked
Yeah.
about the top. We talked about the bottom.
Yeah.
And there's a couple others left in the middle, but
Yeah.
I think that's it.
Yeah, Seton Hall had a buzzer beater there. Tyrese Samuel with
I
the
did
buzzer
see
beater
that.
against
Yeah.
Memphis, banking that in. Seton Hall right now, it's funny on paper, Seton Hall has just about as good of a resume as Xavier does when you break it down into like quadrant wins. So it's a team that I think is still very much figuring itself out. Nobody has had a 20-point game for them this year. The offense has been very hodgepodge, and it's an ensemble cast for that Seton Hall team. But it's been mostly effective. They have a really tough game this week. We're going to get to that on the Wednesday show because their game is on Thursday. So we'll talk more Seton Hall then. Yeah, Marquette's only losses have been against good teams and in close games so far. So we're going to talk about them in a minute here because they get Baylor this week. Middle of the pack of the Big East is looking very middle of the pack right now.
It looks as to be expected. Teams are in the 5-2, 4-3 range. Beating inferior opponents the way you should, or the way you shouldn't if you're Providence. It looks like the middle of the pack, where those are the teams that are gonna net out at that like 10-9, 10-10 conference record, or like 11-9, something along those lines, where it's like they're all the difference between third and ninth is tiebreakers.
Yeah, exactly. And it's honestly, these teams in the middle of the pack in the Big East are probably all on the outside looking in for the tournament if the tournament were to happen today, or you're going to be bubble teams. So opportunities to build a resume. We're going to talk about that in a second when we look ahead. But before we look ahead, let me let you know that we've teamed up with SeatGeek this season to get you the best deals for tickets to your favorite teams. SeatGeek takes the confusion out of buying tickets, and they're here to give you some great deals. Get in on the fun and head over to SeatGeek, download their app, and use code NCAA Hoops Digest for $20 off your first purchase. The code does work, so please go use that and support us. You definitely want to go do that. Let's look ahead now, Joe. And we do not have to look very far ahead to find some good basketball. We're doing this here on Sunday, November 27th. And we got 3 very good games going on today. I apologize to the Seton Hall fans. Seton Hall also plays today. They play Siena. That is not going to get listed in the best games of the day here. Well, let's start out with a team we were just talking about in what's going to be the first game today. This is at 3 o'clock, so just a couple hours away on ESPN2. Villanova's playing Oregon, an Oregon team that we talked about. UConn just put a beating on. Now Villanova's got to play them.
This is, the kind of game where Oregon's going to come in and they're feeling wounded because they just lost. Villanova's coming in. They're feeling even more wounded because they just lost to a team that they should have beat. I don't know. I like Oregon in this one just because I think Oregon is going to ride the beatdown momentum more so than Villanova is going to ride the, we're feeling sorry for ourselves momentum. It also fits the bill of what's been happening so far this season with Villanova, is that, they're not necessarily picking themselves up after losses. They're kind of coming out and laying more eggs. I have yet to see that fire, like, we need to win this game. And I think that was evident when Portland went up 18 on them.
Yeah. And Villanova is actually favored by 1.5 in this one, which I think is really interesting. Oregon's also 2-4 right now. Oregon's wins are against Florida A&M and Montana State. Their losses are to UC Irvine, Houston, UConn, and Michigan State. So they have the Michigan State loss, the UC Irvine loss, and the Temple loss feel very similar. And then Oregon's loss to Houston was a close one, and that's a very good Houston team. And then there's the UConn blowout. I mean, these two teams feel like they're in very similar spots, and it's not an elimination game, but the team that loses this one has kind of wasted a good opportunity to rebound a little bit. Both of these teams should be in the tournament on paper.
On paper, yes. I think the winner of this game is going to be the team that probably, if these two teams are on the bubble in March, this could be the deciding factor here.
Yep. It's not an elimination game, but it could play out that way long term, depending on what happens. The next game in our slot here, really interesting stuff with Xavier against Gonzaga. This is all three of these games we're talking about are the final day of the Phil Knight PK 85 out there. Xavier against Gonzaga, 7:30 tonight on ESPN. This is what we talked about, where Xavier has looked good. Now, can you compete with the best? I don't think they need to beat Gonzaga to prove themselves here. I think you can take a moral victory here, keep it within 10, maybe 5 points, and feel good about it. I mean, Gonzaga's a very, very good.
I was gonna say Gonzaga is Gonzaga,
But Gonzaga is beatable this year. This is not last year's Gonzaga team. I look at that Drew Timme against Nunji and Fremantle matchup as kind of the thing to highlight here and the most exciting part of this game.
I have a hot take. I think Xavier's going to win this game. I think
Really?
it's kind of third time's the charm. Lose to Indiana, lose to Duke. All right, here's like it's like the schedule is handing them opportunities to beat a quality opponent in the preseason or the non-conference. Excuse me. I think Xavier takes this one. I think Xavier by 1 point.
So you're calling a real close one here. Gonzaga coming in 4-2. They got killed at Texas, beat Kentucky, and then got killed against Purdue on Friday in this tournament. And they beat Portland State earlier on. Yeah, Gonzaga has not been as good as people expected. I think that's kind of reflected, like their KenPom ranking. They started at 3 and they're down to 7, which isn't like a huge drop.
No,
but in the context of the top 10, they're just not. Like, they're playing good basketball. They're not playing quite as good basketball as we've seen the last couple of years from Gonzaga. And they've had a couple of years recently where they've been wire to wire, like the number 1 team on KenPom, they're just never leaving the top 5. So now that they're out of that top 5, this is beatable. This is winnable for Xavier. You don't have to, but you'd like it. You really like this one. This looks really good on the resume if you have it.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Last one tonight, the championship game here between UConn and Iowa State. First of all, I mean, this is an Iowa State team under TJ Otzelberger there. They had like everybody transfer out this past summer. I know early on in the transfer cycle, the Iowa State fans were all very, very upset at the way things were going, and then they backfilled those guys and able to bring in some people. And this looks like a really good team. Iowa State's also going to play St. John's in the Big East Big 12 battle there next Sunday. So we talk about having the common opponents in non-conference, letting you know where teams stand. UConn's got a couple of them here. UConn, I think, should win this game.
I think UConn is going to win this game. I wouldn't be surprised if Iowa State pulls another, rabbit out of the hat here and does something special, because Iowa State knocked off Villanova before knocking off UNC. So, I think there's potential for Iowa State to upset UConn here. Don't know if they will. I just think UConn is better, flat out better. But who knows? Maybe Iowa State's got some sort of grudge against the Big East and they'll beat UConn too.
Iowa State's been a big riser this season. When we're talking about the computer metrics, they've moved up from 62 to 43 as of the time of us recording this, which 19-point jump in 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks there. Big stuff. They played good basketball so far. Both of these teams are undefeated. This should just be a fun game. It's late night. This is the 10 o'clock start. Yeah, this is the 10 o'clock start. So feel bad for anybody who has an early morning wake up on Monday. You may have to catch the highlights of this when you wake up if you got early work. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this one.
Yeah, I think this will be a good game.
Yeah, Iowa State also, they have a very good defense, and how they contain Sonogo is just good. How anybody does. I think if you're a Big East team, you're going to watch every one of these UConn games to see what teams throw at Sonogo to try to stop him first and foremost. So I think that's you look at that here out of curiosity to see what they end up doing and if it works.
Yeah, I don't know how to stop Sonogo. How do you stop a rhinoceros that shoots threes?
Yeah, it seems impossible on the surface there.
Yeah.
We've also got the Big East Big 12 battle starting this week. We're going to have a show Wednesday night after the Wednesday night games where we're going to be previewing the back half of this. So we're just going to be doing the Tuesday, Wednesday games here. And there's only one Big East Big 12 battle game on Tuesday, which is an interesting one. Marquette has a tough week this week. They get Baylor and Wisconsin at home. There's a Marquette team that they've lost the games you think they'd lose, but they win all the games you think they should win. They bounced back this week from a tough loss against Mississippi State by beating the daylights out of Georgia Tech there. They both the good teams they played. They played close, and both were away from home. I don't think Marquette wins this one.
No, me
I
neither.
think this is way more winnable than it looks on paper.
I think Marquette will make it close. Honestly, I think Baylor wins by 12. Is where my head is at with this one, but I don't think it's going to look like that until crap time at the end of the game. Like Baylor's going to win by 12 off of like 6 consecutive free throws because Marquette needs to foul to stop the clock. Like that's how they're going to get to a double figures win. But I think Marquette's going to make it really close. I think that's just the brand that Shaka Smart has put on the court with the Golden Eagles. I think that's the brand we're going to see. I think if Marquette's going to win this week, it's going to be over Wisconsin. I'd be surprised if they beat Baylor.
This is a very tough game for them. This is a Baylor team. Baylor has not played an opponent like Marquette this year. Just when it comes to quality of opponent, they played 2 top teams in Virginia and UCLA, and they split those games. Everybody else has been a bad team. So this is kind of that like bubble team range where we haven't seen Baylor play, so we don't know exactly how good they're going to be. Yeah, this is they say it's going to be 5.5, 6-point game here. I mean, Marquette can absolutely win this one with a good performance. We saw them do it last year. This is a Marquette team that has put together wins that you would not necessarily expect of them with that win at home over Illinois last year. I think Baylor is better than that Illinois team, but maybe this Marquette team is a little bit better than last year's Marquette team. If that's the case, again, this is a game you have to watch to see what happens.
It's not out of the realm of possibility for Marquette to win. Like I said, I expect it to be close. I mean, if it comes down to the last possession, I would take Marquette. If Marquette's trailing by 3 or 4 with like a minute and a half to play, I don't know, but we'll see. This is a winnable game for Marquette. It could also, has the potential for the wheels to fall off.
Yeah, and it does. A loss here from Marquette doesn't really hurt them that much. I don't think it's Baylor's the championship program.
Yeah,
that'll be the 8:30 game on Tuesday night on FS1. There's also a 6:30 game. St. John's hosts LIU. Should not be a close game there. I believe that's not one we're going to have to talk about this week if St. John's takes care of business there. Let's move on to the Wednesday night slate, because this is where things get interesting. There are 3 Big East to Big 12 battle games that night. 2 of them are interesting. There's also Southeast Louisiana at Xavier and Samford at DePaul in the late slot. Well, we'll start with these. The first one, 6:30 Eastern, Kansas State at Butler on FS1. Butler has looked competitive for the most part against good teams, but all of the games have been away from home. Now they get a chance to get one of these quality opponents at Hinkle, and maybe that changes things for them.
I was going to say, I like Butler in this one. I think coming off the heels of that Tennessee loss, I think they're going to be hungry for some sort of power conference opponent win, and Hinkle's a tough place to play. I think Thad Matta's team is going to take the dub here.
Yeah, and they've been kind of inconsistent shooting the 3-ball this year, but when they've shot it well, they've won. They have 3 games where they've shot it 40% or better. All 3 were wins, including a win over BYU earlier this week. So, if Butler can find that shooting, they can beat anybody in the country. They're just super inconsistent about it. And I think that's going to be the story for Butler all year long until they find that shooting consistently. Ali is still out for them. You would assume he's going to be coming back on the Sooner side, but we don't know. There's no updates there. He's a guy who's a forward who can shoot the 3, and that probably helps Butler a ton. It'll take some load off of Lukosius there, Simas Lukosius. Make things just a little bit easier for everybody there. But yeah, very, very winnable game for Butler. And this is the kind of win that really looks good on a resume, and it could be the difference between being outside the bubble and inside the bubble in March.
Yeah, I agree. It kind of gives me vibes of the Texas Tech at Providence game from last season.
Ooh, I like that.
That's kind of how I feel going into that one.
Yeah, I can see that. I think, Kansas State has been an up and down program. They've been good this year. They beat LSU already. They crushed URI. They have an overtime win over Nevada. This is a Kansas State team that's undefeated and looking to build off of what they did last year, where they had a decent season in a very hard Big 12 conference. So, yeah, very, very good stuff there. Jerome Tang in his first year as the head coach there, too. So yeah, interesting stuff there. And then the 8 o'clock window has 2 games. Both of these, I believe, are supposed to be on ESPN Plus. So you may need to get yourself a subscription to that. This is your warning to get that before Wednesday night if you want to watch one of these games.
Great.
Yeah. Providence at TCU, Georgetown at Texas Tech. So 2 games there in the state of Texas. We'll start with the Providence TCU one, which I know we're going to talk about in more detail later on our podcast, The Flex. So go listen to that if you're looking for more Providence content. This is a TCU team. Started off the year with 3 awful games and now has put it all together and looks like the top 25 potential team that people thought they'd be before the year.
Yeah, this game scares the daylights out of me as a Providence fan just because it's the final quality opponent on our non-conference slate. It's away from home, and if you watched the way the Friars played Miami and then St. Louis, this one scares me a little bit. I think Providence will come out with a fire, but like I said, TCU, like you said, TCU is just they're turning it on and they're looking like the team that they were supposed to be coming into the season. This would be a season-changing victory for the Friars. And I say that like we're not 5-2, but it would be season-changing given the way that we've played thus far. Our wins over, inferior opponents haven't been great. They've been by double figures, but they should be by more. Our defense has looked lackluster, and we've lost the 2 quality opponent games that we've played. This is it right here. If you're Providence, you have to take this by the horns. But TCU, man, they look good. They're returning a couple of guys. It's looking like all things are in favor of the Horned Frogs.
Yeah, they're getting Damian Ball back for this game. He was suspended for the first 6 games of the season. He signed with an agent when he shouldn't have. He's back. He's a starter for them. Scored double figures last year, averaged 10-point-something points a game. So it's a TCU team that just won the Emerald Coast Classic and is now adding a starter that they didn't have for that.
Yep.
This is a very tough game for Providence. The last chance for a quad 1 win here, unless something drastically changes with URI. The last chance for a quad 1 win in the non-conference. And I mean, the Friars can be 10-3 in the non-conference here without a good win, without being that good of a team. This is where you can change that. And like we talked about with Butler, this is the type of game that really can make a difference. Heck, if the Friars end up as a 20-win team, but you lose all 3 of these non-conference games to St. Louis, Miami, and TCU, 20 wins may not get you in to the NCAA tournament. So you need to have those quality ones on the resume. This is a huge, huge game. Obviously, at the same time, it's going to be Georgetown at Texas Tech. This feels like less of a huge game. The Mac McClung Bowl.
This is the Mac McClung Bowl. Oh God, this is the game you check in on during the commercials of the Providence TCU game, and if Georgetown is winning, I don't even know what to say because I can't imagine a reality where Georgetown's beating Texas Tech at Texas Tech.
No, and this is a Texas Tech team that came into the week ranked, probably not going to be with losses to Creighton and Ohio State, but this is still a really good team. Very well coached there with Mark Adams. Ken Pom projects this as a 14-point victory for Texas Tech, and that's still probably baking in some preseason stuff for Georgetown. I'm taking Texas Tech on that. I haven't looked at the actual betting line. We'll see what that looks like later in the week.
You got to pump those numbers up.
This game should not be competitive based on what we've seen this far this season. Like, I'm not. If this game ends up being anything other than a Texas Tech blowout, then we're gonna have to have a conversation Wednesday night after this one, because there's nothing that Georgetown has shown this season that shows this game should be within 10 points.
If Georgetown beats Texas Tech, Matt will shave his head and get the Georgetown logo tattooed on his scalp.
Thanks for volunteering me for that one.
Anytime.
Yeah. It's a lot easier when it's not your own hair or skin.
No, it's not.
But yeah, that game should just. This is where we're at with Georgetown right now. Not a lot to talk about there.
Oh man,
this team is what it is right now, and I don't think there's reason. You're looking forward to a new administration there if you're a Georgetown fan.
Yeah, if Georgetown wins this game, they're going to sign Patrick Ewing to a lifetime contract. If they lose, it's kind of status quo over there in DC.
Yeah, I don't know what to say on that one. Going back to the Providence TCU game for 1 second here before we wrap up. What I'm not looking forward to about this one is the court at TCU with that weird
Oh
pattern
God.
and the weird color. Get We talked about getting your ESPN Plus subscription if you want to watch this game. Get a bottle of ibuprofen too, because you're gonna have a headache after watching a game on that floor.
It's just this is the second time in 3 seasons that we've played at TCU, and the first time it was like one of those like 4:30 or 5:30 games. So I was still working and I had the TV on and I had to put on my blue light glasses to watch that. It was a nightmare.
It
Not
throws off the white balance in the arena too, and it doesn't help that because Providence wears black uniforms, it's usually black against white, so there's no other color to break things up or to
no,
really. It just looks super garish. And
it's
yeah, that's
terrible.
not great.
No.
All right, I think that right there is just about gonna wrap things up for us though. A fun Thanksgiving week, a fun feast week there, and one more comment on Big East Big 12 battle. Much better slate all around than the Gavitt games.
Yeah, I
Lots of
agree.
lots of really good games here. It's going to continue through Sunday. So when we talk Wednesday night, we're going to have a whole other slate of games to preview too, which should be fun. I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, if your family isn't already tired of you from sitting around watching basketball all of last week instead of hanging out with them, what's going to happen again this week with the basketball we've got on? So yeah, good stuff to watch there. We're gonna have our graphic up with the schedule for the week tomorrow. That'll have all the broadcast information you need too. So when you're trying to schedule this out, figure out what games you're gonna watch and when and where to watch them, we'll have that up for you. That's gonna do it for us. We'll be with you probably around 10:15 Eastern Wednesday night. I think we're gonna go live just after the Providence TCU Georgetown Texas Tech games, unless something weird's going on with the other two that are after that. We'll probably just go live then and we'll talk. I think Tommy should be back for that one. We're going to have Chris the Dingo on for that one, our Creighton writer, to preview the Creighton Texas game on Thursday night. So you're going to want to stick around. You're going to want to watch that one. And if you're a Friars fan, Joe and I are going to have some Friars content coming at you, I think, later tonight. So stay tuned for that one. You can find that one at the Flex. But yeah, make sure you're subscribed wherever it is that you're listening to this. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at Road to the Garden. Make sure you check out our website for all the written content. You can find our power rankings there or on our Twitter. Make sure you do that. For Joe Howie, I am Matt St. Jean. Thank you very much